So I'm not gonna lie, this is the movie I've both been looking the most forward to and the one I've been dreading. It's a special once-in-a-blue-moon movie that adapts a beloved story just poorly enough to be insulting, but is just competent enough to not make me actively hate it. I didn't think that upon my first viewing. Back then, it would have been a 1 out of 10, but compared to some movies we've seen, this is absolutely nothing in comparison. I'd even dare say it's like the fourth best New 52 movie? I know, it's a high bar to reach, but let's get into it. The Teen Titans are hot on the trail of Brother Blood, the leader of a religious cult who is aiming to become a god by sacrificing human and superhuman subjects. To this end, he employs a newly resurrected Deathstroke to kidnap the whole of the Teen Titans. Meanwhile, the team is having their own problems and situations. For one, they've added a new member between movies, a young Tara Markov with powers over Earth. She's a sassy little tyke who gets annoyed at literally every member of the team and doesn't really seem to want to be there at all. Nightwing has also returned for a brief period to have the Titans help with his personal search for Brother Blood, and he and Starfire move in together while also struggling with Corey's budding feelings of inferiority, as she feels that her role as the leader is threatened by his presence, as he was the team's first leader. Jaime, or Blue Beetle, is struggling with his own feelings and limits, as the scarab attached to his back dislikes his father, and humans in general, ensuring that he's unlikely to ever see his family in person again. To remedy these feelings, he takes to volunteering at a local food drive and develops an interest in the young girl whom he works alongside. Beast Boy has his social media following and is hopelessly smitten with Tara, for some reason. Damien is Damien, and Raven is just kind of hanging out and being the dependable but aloof friend of the team. Eventually, all of the Teen Titans are captured by Deathstroke save for Nightwing, who barely escapes with his life. Tara reveals to the captured team that her actual allegiance is to Deathstroke, as he saved her from a mob who accused her of witchcraft, I guess, but Deathstroke quickly turns on her to complete his contract with Brother Blood, who absorbs all of the Titans' powers. Just then, Nightwing appears, frees the Titans, and they all do battle with the buffed up Brother Blood and Deathstroke. Ultimately, they defeat both, but the building collapses and Tara stays behind for some reason. Luckily, they find her in the wreckage, but she dies in Beast Boy's arms. Apparently, it isn't communicated well. Oh, and they add Donna Troy, aka the first Wonder Girl, to the roster. Roll credits. Before I steamroll this movie with my negativity, I want to start with the positives. For one, it actually looks quite good. While some scenes are incredibly over-animated due to rotoscoping, I believe, most of the action cuts and the general direction of scenes was very well done, with some legitimately striking shots in a few select moments. I mean, it's nothing compared to Justice League Dark, but, you know, it's something. As well, the characters are actually a big improvement from the norm for these New 52 movies. While it is too little too late, especially since this is a lot of these characters' last movie, the work done with Beast Boy, Blue Beetle, and Starfire is much appreciated, as they were all bland as a coat of paint in the last movie. Starfire's plight especially resonates with me, as she's only recently gotten recognition for the Titans' efforts by the Justice League, so seeing her question her role in the face of Nightwing's return is really cool. And seeing them talk about it like actual adults is a really refreshing change of pace compared to how an even lesser movie would treat a personal debate like this. In addition to the broader character work, there are some just great individual lines and similes that fit the narrative very nicely. Namely,
"You don't have to move a mountain to help people, Tara,"
said by Jaime to Tara, and
"I think pain is what makes a hero. It's like a pressure that either forms a diamond or grinds you into dust,"
said to Tara by Beast Boy. These are two of the more concise bits of writing we've seen in the New 52, and it's nice that not a lot had to be said to get the point across. Speeches are nice for the mind, but little nuggets of wisdom go a lot farther in reaching to the heart, and I think these really resonated with me because of that. But aside from that, I like the characters' casual clothes again. Okay, let's get to the stuff I didn't like. Unfortunately, the biggest issue holding this movie back is Tara herself. She's abrasive and holier than thou, and her emotional heart-to-heart with Beast Boy on the beach just amounted to her realizing that, wow, other people have suffered and are suffering outside of her own little bubble, which does nothing for her character and doesn't tie into her revelation or, you know, the multiple face heel, whatever turns at the end. She's essentially like Damien, but less talky, and comes across as that goth hipster chick that literally no one likes in movies. There are a lot of issues with her implementation as well. For one, we don't even get to see her join the team. It just kind of happened off screen in the 1 year gap between Justice League vs. Teen Titans and this movie. And that really sucks the emotion out of her caring about the team. It almost feels like she was just a random stray cat that they took in against the cat's will, and the cat doesn't really like them, but stays because they give it food. It felt eerily similar to that, which I really don't think that's how Tara should feel. There is no affection shared between Tara and the other members of the Titans at any point before her and Beast Boy's talk on the beach, which immediately precedes the events that precede the climax. Yeah, this movie's pacing is kind of weird. It makes it really hard to actually care about her betrayal and subsequent heel face turn when most of the movie isn't even about her. It's about everyone else but her, as well as the continued hits against Brother Blood, which would be fine in a show that has the time to focus on all of these different characters, but this 80-minute movie, where 25 minutes are taken by the climaxes, 5 is taken by the prologue, and another 20 is taken by the other action scenes, there simply isn't enough time. Sure, there's some character work done in those action scenes, which is nice, but unfortunately, some of them feel really out of place and kind of break the pacing sometimes, which just sucks. Because when you get down to it, this movie is just a slightly altered retelling of Justice League Doom, where a team of superheroes goes up against a villainous organization led by an egomaniacal supervillain who believes himself to be a god, where they're taken down due to knowledge gained by who they thought was an ally, primarily freed by the outsider to the group, and then take the fight to the main villains in a climactic battle, just like every other superhero movie. I think that Justice League Doom was done a lot better, though, because it didn't have any baggage to deal with. Similarly to Young Justice Outsiders, Judas Contract had to pick up the slack from Justice League vs. Teen Titans, where half of that movie's cast had one personality trait and nothing else to their name. Now, because they had to give them personalities and problems here, while it makes those characters more palatable, it ultimately only serves to undermine the narrative of this particular movie. Because if you don't care about Tara Markov, you don't care about the Judas Contract storyline. And I didn't. So there. This movie shares some similarity to Justice League Gods and Monsters, actually, where the first 40-odd minutes were actually pretty good with some decent character work, but the climax just falls so flat. Granted, this isn't nearly as good or creative as that movie was, but still. A lot of the problem with the climax is in the villains. Deathstroke isn't interesting in this incarnation. He's once again got a hate boner for Damian, and that's like his entire motivation other than the paycheck, which makes for an incredibly weak character, let alone that they had to give him random super strength to make him even remotely a threat to the now 11-year-old who already beat him once. Our other villain is Brother Blood, who appears for like the first 20 minutes, disappears for the rest of the movie, and then comes back in the climax to Hulk out and be this literal joke by the end of the encounter.
Heathen brats! You've destroyed my holy temple! You've robbed me of my destiny! You will die! You cannot harm me!
Like, why are we afraid of these guys? They're pathetic. And Brother Blood has the most generic design I've seen yet in the New 52. It's absolutely terrible. Judas Contract also opens up a mess of plot holes and questions that are just never answered and will never be answered. So, Jericho is in this movie. Son of Deathstroke, never mentioned by name, but he somehow revives himself from being shot in the head, like 3 days prior to when he revives himself, in the post-credits scene, and that is his only appearance, so we're moving on. The movie opens with a prologue showing the first incarnation of the Teen Titans from back when Nightwing was still Robin. In this incarnation, there's Robin leading, and then there's Kid Flash, Speedy, Bumblebee, and Beast Boy. This prologue also takes place 5 full years before the events of the story, or 4 years before when we were first introduced to the Titans in Justice League vs. Teen Titans. So, what's the timeline here? How long has it been since Justice League War? I know it's been at least a year, even though everyone looks the exact same despite being teenagers who age rapidly. Damian was still 10 in Justice League vs. Teen Titans, as far as I know, though some sources claim that he's 13, I guess. okay, even if we assume that, the Justice League formed, and then we immediately had Son of Batman. So I'm guessing only a few months had passed since the League wasn't even really a league until Throne of Atlantis. You know, that was like a main plot point of that movie, that the League was just kind of an alliance of convenience against Darkseid in war, and after that it was just a publicity stunt. So let's say it's been 3 years and some change since the formation of the Justice League. So the Teen Titans were formed before the Justice League? And like actually formed because they were a thing at least for a while before they met Starfire in the prologue. How? Why? And where are Kid Flash, Bumblebee, and Speedy now? In fact, if they're Speedy, where's Green Arrow? He doesn't even have a wiki page, so God, I guess he just exists somewhere out there in the ether. The more I thought about it as I wrote this script, the more I kept thinking that this prologue might have been the single biggest writing mistake for this movie's pacing and the overall cohesion of the New 52 universe. It doesn't tie into any character's story except that it's when Dick and Corey met. It's completely unrelated to the Judas contract storyline, like there's no Deathstroke introduction or anything like that. And maybe worst of all, it ate up valuable time that could have been spent actually showing something interesting, like Tara fighting Raven, you know, because that would have been awesome. And speaking of, while I could compare this movie to the Teen Titans show, or even the small bit of the Judas contract storyline that they use in Young Justice Outsiders, I won't. I will say that I liked both of those more, but I don't want to compare them directly. They have different Taras and different Deathstrokes with different circumstances and different goals. So beside that it's a Tara working with a Deathstroke, betraying a group of young heroes, there really isn't much similarity. All I will mention in terms of comparison is Tara's sacrifice at the end. In the Teen Titans show, she gives up her life to stop a volcano from erupting and killing hundreds of thousands of people. So when they left the plaque honoring her where it said, "A Teen Titan, a true friend," it made sense because she had actually given her life selflessly. In this movie, she just kind of throws a temper tantrum, which makes it feel like a bad whiplash when Beast Boy then praises her as a true hero come the epilogue. And for the comparison, I'll just say that if her death was portrayed like the show, or at least similar circumstances, you know, where she actually sacrificed herself for the greater good instead of just throwing a tantrum, then I would be fine with it. But as with the rest of her character, it fell flat for me. And finally, just as a very small point, the pacing of this movie is just terrible. The beginning starts out okay, you know, minus the prologue, but as soon as the first mission is done, the movie grinds to a complete stop for like half an hour to do the aforementioned character catch-up from the last movie. And then we just have the limp finale, which was completely devoid of tension or excitement because of the lackluster villains, and the animation quality largely plummeting, the ineffectual direction, and the worst scream I've heard in a long time. Overall, Teen Titans: The Judas Contract is a movie that gets worse the longer it goes on. And while the prologue should have been cut and the scenes don't end up going anywhere, the character work done in this movie is admirable. There are some good lines, good shots, and good designs. If that's enough for you, knock yourself out. But for me, I'd rather not have to give this movie a third run through for a long time.